Welcome to our time of reviews. We seek to solidify what we read this past week and put it back into its story arc. I think reading the Gospels, especially as the pace that we're reading it, it is so hard to miss the forest for the trees. And so many times I think it's important to step back and look at what's taking place globally. And for me, that is the most difficult part of reading through the Bible chronologically is the fast pace that you don't feel like you have enough time to concentrate on one individual scene or one verse or so on. But it's also a great discipline to stand back and look globally, having gone through this pace of saying what is going on. And I think this week is one of those weeks. I think about the statement that Jesus begins the reading with, and he says, "And he spoke this parable to those who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others." And that really captured my attention for a moment. I'm like, "Oh wow, that is a strong statement." Because what does this says? That people who trust in themselves that they are righteous. What is the natural, logical consequences of thinking that you're righteous? Is how you treat other people. Because what happens is you then become the measurement for everyone else, and then you move up to an exalted position of looking down and despising other people. And isn't that the way? And in fact, isn't that the way that the scene is played out again and again throughout the Gospels? The people who think they're righteous, how they treat other people. So think about how the scribes and Pharisees treat other people in the mix. Think about how they treat Jesus. Because here they think they are righteous, and Jesus is actually coming to give them righteousness. But what are they doing? In return, because of their self-righteous attitude, they're despising him. So then you have the beginning of the hatred of Jesus being played out by the scribes and the Pharisees, the chief priests in the temple, beginning in the temple itself, in this week's reading. And so what you see is a world devoid of righteousness lacks love towards others. You have several scenes that pick this up throughout our reading. You have the vineyard scene where every single man is unemployed, waiting for an employer to come along and choose him to be able to work for that day. And so you have men hired at different stages of the day, some at the beginning, some at the middle, and some at the very end. Well, those who worked all day, they had this hope and this expectation they're actually going to be paid more because they put in a full day's labor, forgetting the fact that they negotiated at the very beginning for the terms of that day's work and that payment. And so what you have is you have at the end of the day, you have this anger that's being displayed, because the one thing that they have totally forgotten is the fact that they were unhireable at the beginning of the day. All were truly full recipients of the grace, the mercy that was played out to them by the hire who came by and employed them for that day's work. And so the grumbling and the complaining really reveals a heart attitude. They really see themselves as righteous performers, and they despise others, and they despise the one that hired them. Isn't that what you see played out again and again throughout the Gospels in the treatment of those religious leaders towards the Lord Jesus Christ? And so what we see here is what you see later on in the text, that no one gets what they deserve yet. It's being played out in several other vignettes recorded in this week's reading. You have the story of the 10 servants, and you have all of them receive a minna from the master. None of them had that minna themselves at the beginning of the vignette. They were all given that minna, but they were all required at the end of that stewardship to give a report of what they had done with that minna. So you had the double reward for the first one, and then the second one was compensated for his investment. But the third one, what did he do? He actually buried what had been given to him. Isn't that the way? Isn't that played out again and again in what's taking place in Jerusalem there as Jesus ministers to people and throughout his whole ministry? Is that you have people who are all given something. What do you do with what you've been given? That none of them come to the table with anything that they bring themselves. They've all been given the benefit of something in which to invest. That's the gospel. That's the gospel message. And that's exactly what Jesus Christ has come to do, to strip every single person to think that they are bringing anything to the table. They are all recipients of whatever the master gives out to each one, and they're held accountable to what they do with what they've received. And so what you have at the conclusion of this week's reading, or really it's not the conclusion of this week's reading, but it's a scene that really does capture globally what has taken place. And it's found in Luke chapter 19. Bear with me for a moment while I read these few verses. It says, "Now as he drew near, he saw the city, and he wept over it, saying, If you had known, even you, especially in this your day, the things that make for your peace, but now they are hidden from your eyes. For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, and they will surround you, be close on every side, and level you, your children within you, to the ground. And they will not leave one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation." I think in all the vignettes that you see with the the vineyard and so on, the menace, is you have this. He was visiting them. He was giving them something. What did you do with what you've received? And so, as you're reading the Gospels, don't just focus on one scene. Step back and think, what's taking place globally? What can I learn from this scene, and how Jesus has entered into this broken world, and what does he seek to provoke as he interacts with the people on from scene to scene?